Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
President Trump sharing a few obvious facts with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, who thinks that he's in a position to push around the President of the United States in the Oval Office, and he learned otherwise on Friday. The Democrat Party is with anybody other than the United States of America, and certainly Donald Trump, because Joe Biden, he's great for the military-industrial complex. Have they gotten those F-16s yet? The Fighting Falcons, wonderful fighter jet. Had an opportunity to fly one myself one glorious day. What a great day that was. And Joe Biden said, yeah, F-16s, yeah, the military-industrial complex loves me. Probably get more money out of them than we got out of Ukraine or out of China for the Biden family coffers. A very good Monday to you, and welcome back once again. We remain at 888-630-9625. Just heard President Trump there with Mr. T-shirt in the Oval Office, interrupting, stepping on, being incredibly rude and ungracious to President Trump, who invited the flake to the Oval Office and the White House, and they had lunch planned and a joint press conference, and because Zelensky came in and behaved like a Soviet, it didn't go very well, like an arrogant, presumptuous, expectant Soviet. Not a good guy, not a good guy. There are a couple of things that I want to get into President Trump and what happened in the Oval Office on Friday. And I got to say, I want to share something with you. I want to go to the Prime Minister of Poland. He's a prime minister, and his country is Poland. And there were these remarkable moments over the weekend all over the place. I loved the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk. Tusk, like the Fleetwood Mac song, I think of it. But the Polish Prime Minister, Donald, they have a president also because these parliamentary systems are a mess. But they've got Duda, Camp Town racetrack 5 miles long, Ode to Duda Day. And Duda is the president of Poland, but Donald Tusk is the prime minister of Poland. And he had a question that I thought was a very good question, a very good and legitimate question. The United States, we've been in there. We imposed the Pax Americana. That is a reference to the Pax Romana of the Roman Empire. We must remember the Roman Empire every day because of all the great things that they did for humankind. Unlike the left, all the horrible things they've done and continue to do for humankind. But the United States American, my father was a Navy fighter pilot in World War II, many of you are aware, and killed Germans from his Hellcat airplane off of the deck of an aircraft carrier during WWII, the big one, and all that stuff, right? And then 1945, we were able to, the United States America, with some help from Britain, and French people watched from the sidelines as we secured the Pax Americana, Latin for peace, like Pax Romana, the Roman peace, and the Pax Americana post-World War II. The Soviet Union, they were revved up and ready to take all of Europe with tanks and to rape and kill everyone, which they were very, very fond of doing and continue to be fond of doing that when the opportunity presents itself, just by the way, because now they're commies, and they're commies in 1945, too, Joseph Stalin and all that. The Democrats called him Uncle Joe, the number 2 mass murderer in the history of the world, Joseph Stalin. But never mind that. The Pax Americana imposed in 1945, and then we sent our young men to man tanks in the Fulda Gap in Germany, where the Soviet armored divisions would have flowed through, and while they secured much of Eastern Europe, including Eastern Germany and East Berlin, to enslave so many tens, hundreds of millions of people because they're commies, and that's what commies do. But the United States of America, we spoiled them, the Europeans, like spoiled brats. And now they just assume that no matter what happens, We don't have to do anything. The Americans will do it. Ask Mikey. Mikey will eat anything. And we'll fight any war, pay any price in blood, in fortune. We've already given $180 billion or so to the Ukrainians. We've been providing all kinds of intelligence, undoubtedly small numbers of special operations forces under the control of the Special Operations Command or the intelligence community. But never mind that. And so they're sitting there, and Zelensky, the presumptuous, arrogant, self-righteous, misguided, pugnacious Ukrainian born in the Soviet days of Ukraine, and he assumes he can walk into the Oval Office and yell at the President of the United States and tell the President what we're going to do for him. And President Trump has something else in mind. Now let's go to the Polish Prime Minister. That's soundbite number 39. Number 39. And Donald Tusk is his name. And he raises a question that ought to be raised, and often should have been raised on every Sunday morning talk show yesterday, and it wasn't raised on any of them because they're not journalists, they're not Americans, they're leftists, and they're handmaidens to the Democrat Party. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk with obvious and important questions.
Proszę Państwa, jest taki paradoks i ktoś słusznie zauważył, że...
There's a translator.
Zobaczcie, jak to brzmi. 500 milionów Europejczyków.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is a paradox, and someone has overlooked it. 500 million Europeans are asking 300 million Americans to defend them against 140 million Russians. If you know how to count, count on yourself. Start relying on yourself, not in isolation, but with full awareness of your own potential. Europe, if there is something we lack today, it is not economic or demographic power, but in the belief that we are a truly global force.
Yeah, we're a truly global force. Well, he raises very, very important questions that Americans ought to be raising all over the place. And honestly, my friend Seton Motley, Less Government, and online, and a thinker, a writer, and he has been saying this for a long, long time. The population of Russia is 143 million people. The population of Europe is 744 million people. All right? The GDP of Russia is $2.3 trillion. The GDP of Europe is $23 trillion, more than 10 times, more than 11 times the GDP of Russia. The population, again, 143 million in Russia, 744 million, 745 million in Europe. Why can't Europe defend themselves? Why do we have to come like we're the Globocop, the global police department, and we must be called upon every time the commies, like Putin, start acting up and killing people again, which is what they do. And the Europeans, we've created basket cases in Europe because they haven't had to stand up for themselves in so long. Oh, we'll go get the commies on the Korean Peninsula. We'll go get the commies in Vietnam as they spread throughout Asia. And the Chinese communists on that side of the border and the Soviet-backed commies on this side of the border. We'll fight them all. Some Europeans did participate in Korea. Australia participated in Vietnam, too. But never mind that. The Europeans just sit there sucking on bonbons and sipping foulet-poussé and calling us when things get rough so we can come fix everything for them. When, again, you've got hundreds of millions of Europeans, 140 million Russians. Their GDP is 11 times the size of Russia's GDP. Why are we the, pull in case of emergency guys, the go-to guys? Completely ridiculous. I'm with the Polish PM. All right, now let's go to Friday afternoon at the White House, in the Oval Office. President Trump had, this actually made us laugh. We did this as our tease over the weekend. When Volodymyr Zelensky, and apparently the White House had suggested, hey, when the president gets here, why doesn't he wear a suit just for a change of pace? And he said, screw you, I'm going to show up in a T-shirt. It looks like it's like a restaurant T-shirt. What restaurant is that? Do you work there, Mr. President? Must be an illegal alien cleaning dishes in the back or something. But President Trump greeted him at the entrance to the West Wing with the Marines there opening the doors to the armored SUV he arrived in, courtesy of us. And President Trump made a little quip because it had been suggested maybe he should wear a suit and tie.
You're all dressed up?
Yes, I had pretty close. How are you? Pretty sharp.
He's all dressed up today.
He's all dressed up today. He's dressed like a teenager going to a rave in Baltimore. Am I right? Dressed like somebody going to a rave in Baltimore? I think so. President Trump and in the Oval Office, sitting in the armchairs, the wing chairs, and this has been going on for like 25 minutes now. And Zelensky is sitting there looking like a disgruntled teenager. And he's shrugging and he's rolling his eyes and he's grinding his teeth and curling his lip and he's being petulant and then it started to get fun.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
See, the Democrats, the criminal Democrats in America and Washington, they're glad that Volodymyr Zelensky is talking over, interrupting the President of the United States in the Oval Office, stepping on him. And the President's explaining to him in no uncertain terms, you'd just be another cornfield in the Putin empire were it not for the United States, America, and your European pals. Where have they been again? Where? They've been on vacation in the south of France. That's very nice. I like being on vacation in the south of France, too. But never mind that. And the guy just kept interrupting him, stepping on President Trump over and over again and rolling his eyes and being an arrogant, petulant putz.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling
Shut up and
with
listen.
World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
My mother taught me better than that when I was a child. I'm in someone else's house. It happens to be the house of the President of the United States, most powerful man in the world, who's kept me afloat because the commies are attacking again.
You haven't been
this
alone.
Cabinet.
You haven't been alone.
This cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
Shut up and listen.
And you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
And then the Democrats say, Trump spreading Putin talking points. Really? Maybe the Europeans should go in and protect Ukraine. And maybe this punk should shut up for a minute and listen to the President of the United States and his Lord and Savior when it comes to the hundreds of billions of dollars and everything we've provided to Ukraine.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And
That's
your
a
people
fact.
are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out.
Because the Euros aren't going to be there for you, just by the way. It got much better when J.D. Vance jumped in. Now, that was already going on, and J.D. Vance jumped in. And it got, and that's where it really took off and got better. But I got to tell you, I was pretty neutral on Volodymyr Zelensky until Friday. Now, I was just sitting here in front of the microphone. I was smacking like, what he deserved was like a smack like a child would get. Yeah, give him a little Doug Emhoff action there. Give him a smack till he spins around. You know that this country, our country, was built on hard work. And whether you're standing long hours every day, running errands and chasing the kids, just doing your part to keep the world turning, you shouldn't have to deal with fatigue and foot pain and knee pain. And that's where G-Defy shoes come in. G-Defy shoes are built with patented VersaShock technology. The FTC has authorized G-Defy to tell you that these shoes are They're there to help relieve minor and occasional pain associated with walking, running, prolonged standing. G-Defy shoes help to absorb harmful shock when you walk and run and climb stairs, align your body, improve your biomechanics, and return energy with every step you take. You know, my best girl and I, we've got G-Defy shoes. We hike around the city. Your arches feel better when you're done hiking. And right now, you can get 50% off your order of $120 or more. Right now, because you hang with me by texting Chris, that's my name, to 91888. Or head to Al Gore's Amazing Internet to gdefy.com. Use the code Chris there. Or the code Chris at 91888 to save 50%. With G-Defy's 60-day risk-free trial, you've got nothing to lose. Message and data rates apply. Yeah. All right, the really good stuff is still coming up. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Now, for their part, let me share with you what the Soviets of the Democrat Party are doing today. There is a radical anti-American lunatic by the name of Jasmine Crockett. She's a Democrat member of the House of Representatives from Texas, and she is out there saying insane, un-American, lunatic, Civil War stuff like this.
Unfortunately, we have someone that is occupying the White House, and as far as I'm concerned, he is an enemy to the United States. He swore an oath just like the rest of us. But right now, when you are literally putting us at risk, all because of what? Because you want to convince your followers that you should be a dictator too, that you should never leave the White House because you don't believe that elections should take place. I don't really understand what is going on, and I don't know what it's going to take to get people to wake up.
Well, it's clear that you don't know anything about anything, that your brain died a long time ago. Aren't you amazing? Jasmine Crockett is occupying the White House. That's because he won the election, the popular and the electoral college. And then she said even crazier stuff because she's out of her mind. And he said, oh, yeah, he doesn't believe in elections and he's not going to leave. Now, I think now you're talking about Volodymyr Zelensky, who canceled the election in Ukraine. Oh, it's in the Constitution. Yeah, so he couldn't. Oh, the Constitution won't let me hold an election that I might lose. Isn't that amazing? And Jasmine Crockett had this crazy stuff. Trump is occupying the White House. He's a threat, a danger to our democracy and to the U.S. What? They are the party of war. The Democrat Party is. Only if you count the American Civil War, where they fired on Fort Sumter and wanted to keep their slaves. And then, of course, World War I and World War II and the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And they screwed up our intelligence before 9/11. Me and Julio down by the Ukrainian schoolyard. Yeah, the Democrat Party is the party of endless war. Let's not look at their history or anything like that. Zelensky showed up in Washington hat in hand. He went into the Oval Office hat in hand, saying, give me everything I demand. And he literally said he has demands just like Vindman. He's got demands, little fascists. Honestly. Now, President Trump was attempting to communicate with little Volodymyr. And Volod, his Secret Service code name is The Load, because it's the English translation for Volodymyr. All right, let's go because President Trump was being talked over rudely again and again. Jasmine Crockett, she is out of her mind. Is she not out of her mind? She is certifiably insane. And a typical Democrat today, not even close to being on our side. But let's get back to number 7, J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, sitting in the Oval Office with the President, watching the behavior of Volodymyr. And J.D. Vance had a better angle Our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was seated next to J.D. Vance on one of the couches in the Oval, and that's what they call it in D.C., the shorthand. Yeah, I was in the Oval. You know, you're in the Oval. Everybody knows what you mean. Although there is a bar across the street from the White House called the Oval Room. The Oval Room, but they have cold beer. But never mind that. J.D. Vance was sitting there, and he had a better angle on Volodymyr's body language and his behavior and his eye rolls and his lip curls and his arms crossed tightly across his chest like and Trump was just saying, you know, I've empowered you, I've emboldened you, like you're a tough guy because the United States has your back. The United States doesn't have your back. You're not playing this tough guy stuff. So don't come into the Oval Office and act like you've got a list of demands for us or else. And he's playing a propaganda game that the left is playing with him. And we'll get into that, too. J.D. Vance, United States Marine, combat veteran, unlike their boy, Tim Walz, who, what is he now? I think he's a girls lacrosse player or something. J.D. Vance.
With respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? That you say what problems we have?
He cut him off.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country? In this entire meeting, you said thank you. You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
And he's still talking over him and interrupting. Just try to be gracious. Don't act like such an Eastern European, okay? Don't act like you were born in the Soviet Union, even though you were born in the Soviet Union. You arrogant, petulant, out of order. And what J.D. Vance is referring to there is stories that I believe I made mention of here on the radio, but I've certainly been tracking this. In October of last year, Ukrainian men dragged away outside Kiev nightclubs and restaurants by army recruiters. Chaos descends outside of some nightlife spots as military recruitment officers checked documents. They're literally going into restaurants and nightclubs and places where people hang out and dragging young men out and saying, you're in the army now. Here's a rifle. There are the Russians. Go get killed. Which is classic World War II era and even before and after European warfare. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation also had Ukraine military recruiters raid bars, restaurants looking for men not registered for conscription. And they're dragging them away and forcibly conscripting them. Ukraine military, National Post, raids Kiev bars, restaurants for men not registered for conscription, and they're tossing them into the munch machine. And that's not food. That's pretty amazing stuff. So amazing. Now there was and good for J.D. Vance, and that got the I almost used a bad word. The president of Ukraine, that got him all riled up, and then he's really getting in their faces. I'm like, buddy, you don't have a leg to stand on. And President Trump is saying, you don't have the cards to play. And he's like, I'm not playing cards. It's a metaphor.
You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
you're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now.
And I'm not playing cards. Yeah, really, you're playing with our cards. It's a metaphor. It's man. Then there was a kind of a fun moment when a reporter there named Brian Glenn had a moment with Volodymyr Zelensky, and he asked him, hey, why don't you wear a suit like, the leader of a country?
Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see do you own a suit?
You have problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting.
I don't have such. I will wear a costume after this war will finish. Okay. Yes, maybe something like yours. Yes, maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper.
Yeah, you're in the Oval Office, the office of the highest-ranking person in the United States of America. You're here begging for billions and billions more dollars and keep your country from being completely overrun by Putin's commie horde, and maybe dress like you're going to a nice dinner or a bar mitzvah or something, for the love of, I'm telling you. Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, sometimes a Republican. He had a pretty good moment after this episode in the Oval Office.
Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with. The way he handled the meeting, the way he confronted the president was just over the top.
It certainly was. Who are you again? And what are you doing here? Perhaps your mother should have communicated manners to you, not in evidence today in the Oval Office. Your petulance is duly noted. If I were the president, I wouldn't have just rolled over while he talked over me and interrupted me again and again. Marco Rubio, former senator from Florida, is now our Secretary of the entire Department of State, and he was yesterday on This Week with a Democrat Party apparatchik, George Snuffleupagus.
The sooner everyone grows up around here and figures out that this is a bad war that's heading in a bad direction with death and destruction and all kinds of dangers surrounding it that could spiral into a broader conflict, the sooner people grow up and realize that, I think the more progress we're going to be able to make. But the president's crystal clear. He campaigned on it, and he's going to govern on it. And that is, he is going to be a president that tries to achieve peace, and he has been very clear this is a war that would have never happened had Donald Trump been in the White House, and it needs to end, and we're going to do everything we can to end it in an enduring and sustainable and fair way.
Putin and these remnants of Soviet communism attacked Ukraine under Barack Obama, and then they sat tight during 4 years of President Trump. Then they attacked Ukraine again after having taken the Crimea along the Black Sea under Obama, warm water port and all that stuff. And then they attacked northern and eastern Ukraine under Joe Biden, when Joe Biden's president. None of that happened under Trump. And the Democrats, they're the party of weakness, of spinelessness, of war, of death, of mayhem, and 1 million abortions a year, which they say is not enough. Marco Rubio.
What is the United Nations for? Isn't it not a forum to promote peace in the world? And shouldn't our president, shouldn't we all be happy that we have a president who's trying to stop wars and prevent them instead of start them? And I just don't get it. I really don't, other than the fact that it's Donald J. Trump. If this was a Democrat that was doing this, everyone would be saying, well, he's on his way to the Nobel Peace Prize. This is absurd.
It's exactly 100% right. Barack Obama was given the Nobel Peace Prize for melanin levels, and that was it. And then war broke out all over the place, and he attacked more countries, 8 countries militarily. Barack Obama did more countries than any president since World War II ended. Marco Rubio was having none of it.
I would ask everybody this. If there are no negotiations, what is the alternative? Another 4 years of war, another 3 years of war, in which the United States and Europe continues to pour billions of dollars into a war in Ukraine? Is that the alternative? I've asked every foreign minister I meet with, tell me your idea of how this turns out. Most don't have a plan. A few have said, well, let's give them another year of fighting. A year from now, a year later, after another year of death, another year of destruction, then maybe Putin will be ready to negotiate at that point.
The news media, I played the soundbite of Brian Glenn asking the question, why aren't you wearing a suit in the Oval Office? The news media is having a complete anti-intellectual meltdown over that moment. The New York Times, their headline, in quotes, why don't you wear a suit? A right-wing news outlet with coveted access. It's the coveted access. With coveted access. questions Zelensky. That's the headline, questions. That's his job. He's a reporter. He's in the Oval Office. Zelensky's visiting. He's supposed to question Zelensky. Maybe the New York Times should look up what journalism is. Isn't that amazing? And MAGA, the MAGA reporter whose humiliation of Zelensky sparked a geopolitical crisis. No, Zelensky sparked a geopolitical crisis by behaving like a third world tree dweller and someone with no manners. That his mother taught him. Rubio talking about Zelensky.
No one here is claiming Vladimir Putin is going to get the Nobel Peace Prize this year, or that he should be the Man of the Year of the Humanitarian Association. What we're arguing here is he has a very large country. They're in full war footing. They're cranking out weapons now at a war footing pace, and we need to figure out, is there a way to get them to stop the war? And the only way you're going to do that is to get Russians engaged in negotiations.
The Democrats and the media are fighting to make sure that there are no peace negotiations, that there is no ceasefire. And they're with Hamas. They're doing the same thing. They're the party of death and war and of destruction, Marco Rubio.
I hope this could all be reset. I hope he comes to the realization that we're actually trying to help his country here before it suffers thousands of more casualties. Why is any of this good for anybody? And the argument that we're going to just keep it going forever, that's absurd.
That is absurd, I've got to say. Now, the reality is that it looks like Zelensky went into the Oval Office planning on detonating his diplomatic suicide vest, which he did. And here is the Secretary of the Department of Treasury, the Fox News Channel. Treasury Secretary reveals Zelensky nixed Trump's mineral deal twice prior to Oval Office blow-up. Appearing on the Ingram angle, Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, told Laura Ingram, "This has to be one of the greatest diplomatic mishaps of all time by President Zelensky." And I couldn't agree more. He blew it up. It was a diplomatic suicide vest, as we tweeted out on Friday, and we've been talking about ever since at the dinner table and over beers and every place else. This guy is not the hero of the story. Now, I tell you what, Michael, I want to get to Barack Obama. Let's get to Barack Obama because I want to share with you because I remember things. So we have got a news media that doesn't remember anything. But Barack Obama, when he was president of the United States, Barack Obama had a meeting. It was in South Korea with the Russian Putin envoy, Dmitry Medvedev, but Putin was really in charge. And Dmitry Medvedev and Barack Obama sitting there, and he didn't realize he had a microphone on because he's not as bright as the New York Times would have you believe. And he said to Dmitry Medvedev, Barack Obama did, that the election is coming up. His re-election for president is coming up again. And here's the hot mic moment that the news media praised because he was colluding with Putin. He was in bed with Putin. He was Putin's poodle. He was sucking up to and bowing to Putin, Vladimir Putin, and to communist Russia.
My last election for you. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and stand with me.
I will transmit this information to Vladimir. I will transmit this information to Vladimir. And the news media loved it. Oh, look, he's sucking up to Putin. He's showing everyone that he's Putin's poodle. I'll have more flexibility. Tell Vladimir, hey, Dmitry, tell Vladimir I'll have more flexibility after I'm elected to my second term as president. And it's like a Boris and Natasha cartoon. I will transmit this information to Vladimir. Comrade Barak! Comrade Barak! We're comrades now! Big hug, big hug. Put your fur hat on. Yeah, Barack Obama with then Russian President. Putin's still the real power. Dmitry Medvedev tell Vladimir, proof that he's really in charge. that I'll have more flexibility after I'm re-elected to a second term as president. And the media applauded that open mic gaffe. Also, remember Barack Obama during a presidential debate with then Mittens Romney.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War's been over for 20 years.
Yes, the 1980s called. They want their foreign policy back. The media loved that, like 5-year-olds with squirrely brains. They'd grow up to be dumb if they were 5-year-olds. And then you may remember, and again, he was praised for that by our filthy news media. He was praised for the Dmitry Medvedev open mic moment, too. Tell Vladimir, comrade Vladimir, my close comrade, tell him that I was mentored by Communist Party member Frank Marshall Davis when I was a teenager. Tell him I made Communist Party voter John Brennan the CIA director, and he's going to undermine our future presidential elections. Tell comrade Vladimir I'm on Team Soviet Union. And then you may remember the dim-witted Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State meeting with her counterpart from Russia, Sergei Lavrov, who was a killer. And she brought an easy button from a Staples commercial and pretended it was diplomacy.
We want to reset our relationship. And so we will do it together.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. We worked hard to get the right Russian word. Do you think we got it?
You get it wrong.
I got it wrong.
It should be перезагрузка. And this says перегрузка, which means overcharge.
Well, we won't let you do that to us. I promise.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Would be on my desk.
Again, if an idiot Republican Secretary of State showed up with an easy button from a Staples commercial, and they brought all their experts from Harvard in to translate the English language to the Russian language and put Cyrillic letters on the easy button from a Staples commercial and said, it's supposed to say whatever, and we're going to but no, you got it wrong because your Harvard geniuses are all a bunch of idiots just like you, as the subtitles when Sergei Lavrov was humiliating her publicly. It says overcharge. We're not going to let you do that to us. Every day's an IQ test.